Welcome, everyone, to the Tools of the Trade live stream. I'm your host, Captain Cole, and I'm joined by my co-host, Trip, also known as Crypto ISO on Crypto Twitter. We got a fun episode for you guys planned today, but first and foremost, would all of our incredible subscribers do me a favor, smash that like button, make us look good for the YouTube algo. Now, the last thing I'll say before we get started here on Tools of the Trade is that nothing we say here on Tools of the Trade is meant to be considered financial advice. We are not financial advisors, and this information is for entertainment purposes only. So with that said, Trip, how's it going, man?
It's good, man. It's nice to see a little volatility in the crypto markets. That was a fun holiday weekend squeeze. Hopefully, you guys got some good trades in. But yeah, the week ahead should be pretty interesting. There's a lot of stuff to talk about and key levels that we were looking at Bitcoin last stream, so we can go over that. So excited to get into it.
Awesome. Yeah, let's kind of just do a little brief general overview of some macro stuff. You know, we're talking before stream about oil, DXY, and then the tech sector. I'd love to kind of get a take there and kind of get a holistic view before we jump into BTC, ETH, and the rest of the crypto markets.
Yeah, I mean, I think the overarching theme that we've kind of touched on that everyone knows is like there's a large force behind rallies in tech, specifically AI. And, how long is that going to last? I mean, people are convinced that this thing is real, as seen from NVIDIA and how much market cap it's added to its valuation. And the guidance basically was pulled forward, like, I forget how many quarters. But the other side of it is like, we've looked at the dollar now for, well, pretty much every stream, but let's pull that up. And it continues, you guys can see this, it continues to kind of march up. And, 103 was the level everyone was looking at. Now we're kind of flipping that. Is this going to go all the way up to, I think we had a pivot right here, if we were going to turn on crayons. Yeah. Can it go back up and take this high at 105? Sure. But, when we look at the dollar going up and then we look at the NASDAQ and ES marching up alongside of it, I think people are kind of wondering, like, what's going on here, right? And we look at crypto, specifically BTC, and this is versus ES. I mean, we've kind of just been in a downtrend, right? Here's your high, here's your low, here's your lower high, here's your low, right? We're just like, it's really not following the risk on in AI and tech, which is interesting because we've traditionally been used to like an ETH NASDAQ trade or a BTC ES trade where the risk is correlated. And so is that stemming from a lot of the regulatory stuff that's going on with crypto? It could be. Is it because maybe there's just better returns to be had in actual like equities that aren't as, I guess some people call them Ponzi's, scams, whatever you want to call it. Then that's kind of the more traditional asset class that people would be more excited to invest to because it's safer. We'll call it that. I think there is some of that, right? And so I'm not sure exactly what gets crypto, back in the mix where liquidity comes back into it. People are interested in it again. Like we've gone through these various narratives, right? We had the banking crisis. I mean, for a short time, maybe the Phemex buying Bitcoin with some of their profits. I also saw they're getting into mining. Nothing's really stuck. I mean, assets went up pretty quickly since the beginning of the year. You could say that crypto led it, and maybe it's leading a decline before other things fall. But it's very much been level to level trading around liquidity, and we can kind of get into those levels. But I will say, like a 4.5% drop in crude today, breaking $70 a barrel, is not something that like we haven't really seen these moves in a commodity, in crude, in particular WTI. So like that can also weigh on some of the perception of growth and risk in the market. Seeing a move like that in oil, and so we've had some commentary from some of the Fed speakers talking about how they think core is still too high. Well, yes, headline inflation is probably coming down, and year over year numbers are going to be lower. If you look at really when the CPI peaked, let's call it. It's not to say it can't go back up, but how's that going to translate into going into the June meeting? There's a lot of cross currents here in kind of macro risk assets, but crypto is not really kind of participating in that. So I find that very interesting, and it's easy to over analyze all the moving parts of like the dollar, oil, gold, commodities in relation to Bitcoin and Ethereum. I mean, you have really interesting dynamic in the altcoin market where some of these alts are going up a lot and some of them are not moving at all. Is that just a continuous hot ball of money rotation, or is there something that people are actually buying some of these because they see value? I'm not sure yet, but let's take a look at Bitcoin and Ethereum to see kind of where we are and what happened. So we'll look at Bitcoin first. Um, we had talked last stream about 26.3 being like a pretty key level. One, because
Must hold. Yep.
yeah, you basically you came down and you ran this low. You didn't take this low, which is like bothersome. Um, but you started to consolidate kind of, let's call it like trading back inside the range, and this is your deviation. And so we were looking at liquidity, and in the most simplest form, like we like to long the red deltas and short the green deltas, or buy or sell, whatever you want to call it. So we were setting up. I think there was like 10 billion in shorts around this time, and we were going into the weekend because we did our stream on Thursday, right, Zoran?
Yep. Yep.
So you're going into a holiday weekend. You know, you had a lot of people who wanted 25.2, and you got 25.8, right? Sometimes a draw on liquidity takes a lot longer than people expect, and
Or
sometimes
they
you
want
need
a
to
full
go up.
run. Yep.
Yeah, sometimes you need to go up to grab and trap before you go down, and vice versa, go down. You know, it's removing market participants. So like this flush right here, I think scared a lot of people, and so when you had the reclaim, we got long here, and I ended up closing 27.3 because this was a conservative move to
Yeah, it was
do.
the range high to basically play level to level within the range, right? Not expecting a deviation like we're kind of seeing right here now.
Yeah. And to me and Zorn, and we had talked about this, is it was either 27.3 or 28.3, right? Your quarterly open, which is 28.4, call it. And when this started to consolidate here, I didn't re-long it. I actually shorted Matic. We had put this in the Telegram. Didn't work. So we caught a long, it worked, shorted, didn't work. And we saw this big impulse. And to me, when this happened, this was something that was like a key level for me in the sense of here's your high, your lower high. We were all waiting for where the lower high was going to be. And market structure wise, like we had already made a low and a lower low. So just playing it safe as someone who's like looking at higher lows and higher highs, or vice versa, lower highs and lower lows, market structure is going to dictate the way you should look at it. So lower high into basically a 61.8 fib retrace back up into the quarterly open and taking this high is like maybe the perfect trap that I could see for this to be the lower high. Now, is 27.5 going to be your retest, and everyone who long this is now going to be rewarded to, you know, whether we go the previous monthly open or up here? I personally don't think so. Um, I think this. I think there's about 7 billion in longs on BTC right now. I think as long as you're staying under the weekly open right now, you're likely going to take out this
Monday
27.5,
low.
come into 27.2, this area. But this is really like an interesting zone. I think people have touched on that's the CME gap down there. I'd be curious to see like how this stacks up on a fib retracement of here's your here's your obvious swing low, and if this is your swing high, okay, well we're targeting the 61.8. It's basically 26.9, right?
Yep.
So there's liquidity there. You'd be taking out, you'd be hitting the previous monthly low, the mid. What do I ultimately think is going to happen is we're trading in a range between this, and this is your draw on liquidity below, and we just took above. And so that's where my head is at with BTC. I think if you start trading above the quarterly open at 28.4, it's going to go higher. But this really makes a lot of sense for me as the lower high, and like we shouldn't necessarily go back up here because we just took out a lot of liquidity here on these stops. Be curious to hear what you think about that, Zoran, for BTC, and we can go over ETH after that. And I'll pull up some liquidity so we can look at that too.
Perfect. Yeah. So, took a nice little weekend break, fresh at the charts now. Just looking at the daily, yeah, like you said, we had this impulse up, which was the quarterly open. But when I put on my favorite Ichimoku, that also happens to be your daily Kijun, right? So the daily Kijun, again, it's your midpoint from your swing high of 31K down to your swing low of 25.8, call it. The midpoint is 28.4. So we came up into this daily Kijun, tapped it, rejected, and now it seems like we're consolidating of what could have been, previous range high turned into potential support here. Now, I'm more in the camp with Trip that, this is likely not or should not trade higher than the quarterly open moving forward. And the reason being, I think that is because, like, Trip said, we swept that key high right here. Liquidity was sourced, and you had a sharp reaction down from that, right? So the reaction down after you swept that high, obviously the most logical support was this 27.5 area, the SR flip of this, call it range high here. We're consolidating here. Now, the only way I see a move higher for BTC is something like maybe sweep the weekly open again, come back down, sweep the Monday low. And now what happens here at this Monday low, whether we break down from it or are able to kind of reclaim it, it's like this reclaim that I would watch for on the Monday low to actually want to get long and maybe target the monthly open. So, trigger for me would be sweep of Monday low, ideally a peep above the weekly open first to kind of trap some long liquidity, rush lower, and then flip here. But if we get down below the Monday low and we just keep going down to the CME gap, like 26.9, right, like we said, I'm not in a rush to kind of just blindly long the CME gap fill, because at that point, the likelihood, like Trip said, that we're going to kind of go down to this, range low here and sweep this and come back in lower, maybe reclaim, and then that's a long here. The probability of that happening is too high for me to like comfortably say, okay, if we come back below, fill the CME gap at 26.9, whatever, it's a long. No, for me, the long trigger is going to be sweep a Monday low, reclaim, then I'm getting long probably around the Monday low, playing back up to the monthly open. But yeah, we talk about this giant range we've been in. We talk about the lower high that we just clearly kind of had, and Trip mentioned market structure. Lower highs and lower lows. So we had our high, we had our low, we had our lower high, lower low, and it's like, where's our lower high? Is it here? There is obviously, a scenario we come back, test this above, fake out, and then come back down. So for me, I'm not bullish nor bearish. I think for the rest of the summer and probably just rest of Q3 in general, once we start it, is going to be just this entire range, just a lot of sideways. Like Trip said, you're playing between probably this range up here, this range down here. Anything above is probably a deviation to short. Anything below is probably a deviation to long. That's kind of how I'm looking at BTC from the higher time frames. I'm still swing short from 30K and 1945 on ETH. I don't really want to touch those until Q4 personally, just because from like a cycle perspective with the halvening event, like Trip said, being more important going into next year, it makes a lot more sense that if this is some sort of reaccumulation range, which I don't seem to believe so, but let's just pretend it is, this will probably drag out into September, potentially October. And maybe then, depending on where we're at, I'll close those shorts and kind of look to flip long or swing long. But for right now, I don't see a narrative that's really going to push us higher into the monthly open, get back above those 30Ks, and everyone's looking for 35 wherever else. That's kind of how I'm seeing BTC. What are we looking at for ETH now, Trip? Or at least some liquidity.
Yeah, let's take a look at the actual Hyblock liquidity on BTC. So, I mean, here was your squeeze, right? Like this was we took a lot of players out who were short, and I think peak at 10 billion in longs when it basically came up to the quarterly open. I think this ratio was obviously way different. I think EXO might have tweeted about it. But if you look, like we still have 6.5 billion in longs. It's not a ton, and this isn't like anything staggering where you're kind of one sided, and you kind of see like this little range forming here. But there's a fair amount of green circles that have decided to buy 27.5. Can I see this happening where you just come straight down and run them all into maybe
26.9.
27.1, or and you're getting like that gap fill, and you can come up and basically test Monday's low and fail and then continue down? Yeah, I don't really like to try to predict that, but if I keep it simple, there's longs in the market. We just ran a key resistance, some highs, and now we're sitting below the weekly open. And I think if we look at where's the daily open, yeah, I mean the daily open's 27,750, right? So we're kind of flirting with this zone. I just think liquidity, the drawn liquidity, is going to be below Monday's low before
Yep.
you actually go up to take any of those higher levels. And that's mainly because we just took some higher levels. So you kind of have to refuel before you go back up. That's the easiest way for me to explain it. And we can
Yeah,
look
and
at
just to kind of echo that before you go on is like, we
sure.
talk about refueling in that little accumulation range. I'm looking at that range you have there, and all I see is really just green dots. If this was going to be like a reaccumulation to kind of make another leg higher, I'd want to see a much larger predominance of red dots showing that shorts are, fading the level, coming into the market saying, I don't trust this move up. But on the contrary, we're seeing a lot of green dots on that lower granularity. And that just tells me that, derivatives are trying to push while spot is not just playing ball. So I think, like you said, it's much more likely that we go lower first to see if we can trap some short liquidity before we go higher.
Yeah, I mean if we look on a less granular setting, I mean, you can see some really big bubbles down here that are
On
more
chips.
attractive than these smaller ones, right? So it just this makes a lot of sense to me. But I think if you're breaking below like the 27.5, let's just look at this quickly. Um, and you're staying below that Monday low, and you're coming into like this zone, you can come back up here and fail here,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then come down.
Exactly.
Um,
That's why the trigger for me would be the reclaim of the Monday low, not just the sweep down. Because you could exactly fail on that Monday low and continue lower and sweep the entire range low, or the previous weekly low, I should say.
yeah, I mean, look where it stopped. The weekly open and the Monday mid, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
these are your key areas that you want to watch. And if you were to like, this is why I really like the fibs on retraces back up and down. Um, if we were to take that like this swing high to that was 28.1. I mean, that's basically you're basically at the weekly open, right? So price ran it to the fib, the weekly open. This is how you can use these levels, confluence as well as Fibonacci, and there was liquidity here, and then it reversed, right? I think if you start losing the daily open here, you're going to most likely take out Monday's low and go down for the liquidity we just highlighted in Bitcoin. So uh, it's pretty easy for me on like I actually did short up here just because I had an alert. I got 28,399. I just was like, this is I actually was like, this is the level, right? So I did it from my phone, but this is resistance. We took this high, shouldn't go back above.
Yep.
So let's look at ETH now, and we can kind of look at the same exact analysis.
I'll throw on ETH BTC real quick just to give a little primer on that. So we talk about ETH BTC a lot. It's in a 700-day range. Kind of looked like it went below the midpoint, kind of just like slowly trickling back up. Everyone has ETH as their high beta play. Just from an Ichimoku perspective, at least on daily, you do have an active edge to edge here. So, Tenkin above Kijun, Chiku span above price, and price is inside the cloud, and the target there is 0.07. So yeah, 0.07. So point being is like that's probably the highest I see ETH BTC pushing up, and like what that 2% move is that going to translate higher for ETH on the way up if BTC does go higher, or is it just going to lead to ETH being more resilient on the way down if BTC breaks down and tries to go for that CME gap fill? That's kind of my little quick rough and ETH BTC take. But yeah, let's get back to ETH trip.
So the again, market structure is king. I mean, it's pretty clear to me that we had the high, a low, a lower high because this was a lower low, and then again, we didn't take these lows out. Kind of how BTC did that similar left this low. There was just one
Yep.
wick, but the thing about ETH for me is yes, you broke. kind of above a diagonal resistance, and you basically retested it right here, which was this high. But you didn't take this high, which BTC did take that high, right? So the previous monthly mid is 1954. And that would be the next logical area for ETH to go if it were to move up. But again, like if you pull this fib on this high to the low, like there's a lot of confluence around why these are resistance levels, right? So we're below the weekly open right now, but we're above the daily. The interesting thing is like we're way above the quarterly open where BTC tapped the quarterly open, and that's probably an indication of ETH BTC as you talked about. But is like again, this could be your range, right? Like here to here, and your draw on
Yep.
liquidity is what everyone has always wanted, the 1660, whatever it is.
Yep.
Maybe it comes down here. Again, it's too early to tell, but if you're, it wouldn't surprise me to see this move and then down because you would have taken this high out. But if you start kind of trading back down below Monday's low, and this is like a fake out above this diagonal,
Yep.
quarterly open seems very reasonable. You lose that, you're definitely going to be going to the previous week low, and then like this liquidity seems right. I haven't looked at the ETH Hyblock. Let's take a look at that. It's running now. Yeah, I mean BTC's 27.7. I mean, I think it's interesting to look at the Bitfinex premium and the Coinbase premiums relative to the perps too, which have
Yep.
been apparent. They were apparent going into the weekend. So if you start to see that dissipate, then it's probably more confirmation that it actually is going to go lower in my mind, because then spot is not leading, and it's probably going to show up in somewhat of the mark and perp price. But yeah, ETH, right? So I mean, look, you squeezed a lot of shorts. Like it was a good move. We had 3.8 billion in longs. We still have 2.6 billion in longs. I mean, green, 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 green. Like
Yeah, it's a ton of green again, similar to
yeah,
BTC.
1830, 1840. Well, this is a big one. This is kind of like a take this low into an SR flip. That's probably similar to the move where BTC does 27, kind of those low 27s.
Yep.
And again, it's not a blind long. I mean, I think you can pay attention to see how many market participants you remove on a delta basis. If this flips red, then yeah, probably you're going to bounce. But if you're like, I'm not really interested in long anything until this is like building up shorts. Look, it can go higher, but that's just like not really the way I trade liquidity around key levels. Those CME gaps are pretty impactful too. So if BTC pulls back, then you're going to see liquidity taken to the downside on ETH as well, and that's going to give you those areas we talked about.
Yep, exactly. And just like a quick aside, I guess, when it comes to how we trade liquidity and why we take these level to level approaches, it's the summertime. The market is still very PvP, and you and I kind of talked about that earlier, that there is no new narrative of new influx of retail participants coming in. This is me versus Trip versus, all of CT versus, all everyone who's still left liquid and still participating. We're all here trading against each other. So like, Trip mentioned a lot of these altcoins, some are getting run. Others are kind of just falling back. It's a clear rotation of the hot ball of money. And the key to remember is that, like, if you're not playing level to level, you're going to, in catching and releasing, which is like Trip's favorite quote, you're going to be giving back a lot of your profits. And the key to remember there is that, if you're in this summer range, volatility is low, liquidity is low, we're trading against each other, you need to be really aggressive with profit taking. So, you may not get the ideal entry. Like, for example, we talked about the Monday low sweep. Maybe you get that 26.9 CME gap fill, whatever, and you long that and you hold it and you get greedy. And then it gets to the Monday low. You're like, oh, great, it's at the Monday low. It's going to reclaim it. We're going from, monthly open or quarterly open, whatever it was, 29.2. That's where you start getting in this cycle of like trying to be too greedy with trades, and then immediately as soon as you start like calculating your P&L at the Monday low, it's going to reject there. It's going to turn back around. You're going to be pretty salty with yourself for not having taken profit. So the whole point of this aside is, if you're trading this summer chop, which is what it really is, it's a crab market, be very greedy with your exits. Even if your entries aren't ideal, have a plan and at least stick to it, because otherwise round tripping is going to be inevitable.
Yeah, and it's like there's always another trade around the corner. Don't think that that's the only trade you can take. That's your winning trade. And sometimes you have to wait a long time for these. And having the plan in place where if it gets to your level, watch for the reaction. It's a lot of set and forget. I mean, you can have two areas of interest that you want to see, like closing at 27.3. I don't regret it, but I missed a large part of the
Part of the
revenue
game.
move. But if I didn't and it reversed on me, I would have been like, well, that's like that was my mindset of where I thought price would like stop going up, but it didn't. So
Yeah.
live and learn. I think yeah. So this is ETH BTC. I mean, like, what do you think of this downtrend break? Is it
Yeah, I
real?
saw that when you threw that up there. Yeah, I'm almost inclined to think it might be once we reclaim 0.07, right? Like that's the edge to edge flat top. So like this could be a fake out above that trend line, right? So like 1, 2, 3, 4 ish. Is this like the rule of fives? I don't know. But if we get above and reclaim 0.07, then I'd be more bullish. Just for right now, it just seems like it's just like kind of grinding up, which is like not a bearish thing in and of itself. But just the way it's grinding up hasn't given me much confidence yet. But is ETH tends to do that though, where it grinds up and then it has that ETH BTC 4 or 5% Chad candle that just kind of sends it up. So it'll be interesting to see if we can get above that 0.07.
Yeah, I'm just look like this is pretty clean retest. Like this is a rather bullish candle. So that also makes me kind of think that you may get the 1954. What was that? The monthly level on ETH that we were
Yep.
looking at?
The sweep of that 1935 high.
1959 is previous monthly mid. Yeah, it would still be a lower high, but you would be taking that liquidity. So
We got a quick question here, Trip, from MK Ultra. Would you take a higher portion of single R trades in this kind of environment for the higher probability? What's your take on that?
what does he mean? Single R trades? What does he
I'm
mean?
assuming just like 1R trades, like targeting 1R versus like trying to swing for the fences, I think is if I'm understanding correctly.
I don't really like taking the 1R trades. I don't even like taking the 2R trades. I like 3 at like minimum. But I also take much less trades to begin with because like all the criteria I just lined out for you, like we had a good trade off the 26.3. Like the other trade I had set up on was Matic, but it was like super tight in validation. And then the the BTC short was like that's very tight. But to his point, like I don't take 1R trades really. I don't even take the 2Rs. 3 is minimum. I take less trades, so I'm not someone who's trading 10 positions at once. Usually, it's 1 or 2 max.
I like that. I think I'd say similarly, especially in this environment. Like you can overtrade in this environment, obviously. And if you're at least patient and you wait for setups to come to you, like we talked about those Monday lows, Monday high sweeps, they might take, the Monday range gets set on a Monday, obviously, and then the sweep may not come till Thursday, Friday, right before the weekend. And you're waiting 3, 4 days, not doing anything. But point being is once you get that sweep, and then you see the reclaim, the probability of that setup actually working out. You get in on the Monday low reclaim or the Monday high reclaim, and then you set your invalidation above the deviation above or below. That's a high probability trade for me. And if it takes all week and I only take one trade that week, fine. I think that's a better approach in this environment. Less is more, especially when liquidity and volatility are both thin and much lower than they are throughout the year, especially now in the summertime. It makes a lot more sense to be more selective with your trades. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, because that's just a ranging market in itself, where it's like you're trending. You can get long probably a lot more things because market structure is dictating the higher lows and higher highs, and like
Yep.
your invalidation around those things is very clear. Where this is like what we just saw over the weekend, and then what can happen like a day later, you can then you're back to zero because
Yeah,
you didn't
exactly.
take any profits or whatever the case is. So being nimble, I mean, I think we've talked about this like a lot. Discipline to your trading plan, and then waiting for those triggers for you to execute on it. it's easy to force yourself into these things and jump the gun on things because you're being influenced by people on Twitter, or you're anxious, but like that, you as a person being like mentally disciplined is obviously an extremely important part to trading.
Yep.
So the more you can practice that, and then the more it becomes routine, um, the better off you're going to be in the long run, right? So
Agreed. And we have one more question here before we kind of get to some alts. You guys feel free to drop any alt tickers and we will get to them throughout the stream. Lexer asks, what is your thoughts about China entering the market? And when he says that, I assume he means, I think Hong Kong is allowing retail to buy a bunch of spot crypto, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's always some mini narrative floating around. It's really going to come back with when liquidity is flushed back into the system and you have a large retail presence into the markets again, and that's going to be where you're going to get a lot of the momentum. And it's not going to be PvP where you'll get an actual bull run, probably times around the halving, just like it kind of always has, next year, right?
Yep. I like
Can
that
we
a lot.
shop around this whole summer? Well, equities actually can continue up. Yeah, I think we can. Can we just shop around in all markets the whole summer? Yes. Is that the
Absolutely.
most painful thing for people?
Yes.
Probably. I would say so. Um, when you have really big moves in like Bitcoin, what it did off the lows, Ethereum, what it did off the lows this year, like the consolidation that needs to occur for another leg up um, takes much longer than people expect because
Yep.
we're used to a fast-paced environment of like in the trade, why hasn't my take profit hit yet? Right? So like especially in the larger assets in crypto like Bitcoin and Ethereum, like washing out sellers and consolidating and with a reaccumulation after distribution, like we don't really know yet. I mean, it could be a range of 26K to 30 something. Like
Yep.
that's very possible, and bearish market structure might not be as obvious. But I just don't think we're in the environment to just rocket up and continue from here. Personally, um, so until we kind of break market structure, right? You would need to make a higher high off one of
Yeah.
those that we just talked about.
And then make a higher low on top of that, right? To kind
Yeah,
of
then you need to
confirm
make
that
a
like
higher low on top of that. Like it takes some time, and I will say once the sellers are actually washed out, uh, if Bitcoin starts to go up, it probably will not let you back in
Yep.
because we
That's
saw
the
what it
beauty of it.
did off the bottom, right? And like, look how long it took to wash those sellers out, right? Um, so those are just some things that I'm cognizant of when I look at these markets and understand that we're trading a range until it's not a range.
Exactly. And just to kind of just touch one more time, just on the China entering, we had Fidelity start their retail crypto platform earlier this year, allowing, or I think it was actually at the end of last year, allowing users to, trade BTC and ETH. I think it was just those two to start on their retail platform, right? And Fidelity is a large brokerage. A lot of TradFi people are very familiar with it, etc. They are closed from midnight till 4 a.m. Every single day. So those are like little fidelity gaps. And I don't think, from the end of last year to today, we can really say or, assign a probability that this entire move from, 16.8 to 30K was driven by, retail. No, I don't really think that's the case. So in the same vein, China, Hong Kong, whoever, allowing retail to participate is a net positive for the space. But I think the flows and the actual impact on price that we all hope and love to see is going to take a lot longer to kind of manifest, right? CME started trading in December of 2018, and those volumes really didn't become important until probably like a year after we bottomed, 2019. So point being is like, it's great for the market, but we need to be more patient. It's definitely a piece of the component that we need to start, the golden bull run, like we like to call it. But we're still a ways away from that. I think at least several months, probably Q4, Q1 next year, whatever the case is. So it's good, but not good enough to get us, these magical 30, 40, 50K numbers that we're all hoping and praying for eventually. Last thing before we go on to Lena, I think is the first request we have. Trip, if the DXY reclaims higher levels, do you see BTC still recovering to previous highs?
Is he talking about like above 105?
Yeah, I'm assuming so.
I think if wow, so BTC is below the daily open now, 27,670. All right. So if the dollar, I'll share this thing. I mean, if you flip 105 and that becomes your support, then you're probably going to trade much higher. That's going to pressure risk assets. Like that's just, it's too extreme of a move to where people will get. I think you'll get that closer, tight, like knit correlation people were used to last year. But
Yep.
like that's a ways away. I mean, we can chop in this range for a while. I just don't see it having like a massive impact on the day to day of crypto right now.
I
Personally,
agree with that.
so I guess the short answer is above 105. If it's like, then if it does that, right? If it goes above 105, here's one way to look at where the target could be. Is your base? This is your double bottom then. This is your. Remember when this was weekly support and everyone was
Yep,
like, "It's
yep,
gonna
yep.
break." Okay, well now we're like marching out of it. You make a higher high off of this, then maybe you start to look at a Fibonacci retracement back up to, I don't know, just use the 61.8. Well, here, this pivot, 109 area. That will 100% probably scare people where risk assets would sell off. I think crypto would probably get crippled in that regard just because you would have an extreme move. But for the time being, this is a range, right? Like here's your range high, here's your range low. So this is your DXY range. So you
Ping
need to,
pong till you're wrong.
yeah, so you need to break out of this. By the way, and the like currencies, these types of assets can range for a long time. So we could do this for a long time with this and make everyone crazy, or come up, run this, and then come back in, right? So it's not something that I'm like terribly concerned with in relation to in relation to crypto, even the Nasdaq and the S&P, because like it's gone up in the face of this, right? So yeah, I mean that's kind of a long-winded answer, but it doesn't. I think if you get above here and you're marching towards here, it will impact crypto.
Makes sense. All right, let's talk about Lena. But before I talk about Lena, I want to bring back to this SXP chart that we talked about last week or 2 weeks ago. And we talked about the Saka floating little Burj Khalifa bounce of death. And the reason I bring this chart up, and you'll understand in a minute, is because we had this move in end of March, beginning of April, this giant parabolic move on SXP, and it ended up going like 300%. And I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, yeah, I think it was this candle with the lower wick, right? Yeah. So this candle here from daily open retraced about 16% before ending up going up higher and higher. And the reason I mention all this because we'll look at the Lena liquidity in a second. When I look at this Lena chart, I see a lot of similarities from both the structural perspective and just the way the chart looks. Obviously this is an asset that has been trading for over a couple of years now. It looks like it's bullish. It's breaking out. Is it, the new start of a parabola? I'm not there just yet. But when I look at this chart, I do see the potential to fade it. But again, I wouldn't fade it blindly here. It's up 33% on the day. Can tomorrow just, do another 30, 40, 60% move? Absolutely. From the bottom or from the lows, it's up 200%. So, another 80% wouldn't surprise me on an alt that's liquid during the summer on Binance, where the cartel loves to play liquidity games. So just looking at it from the daily perspective, Monday high, 2 cents, 2.1 cents, whatever the case is, that would be an area I'd be targeting if I were to fade it for a short. And I'll get to the liquidity in just a second. But obviously, this has been a parabolic move up. The parabola breaks eventually. If you're going to play hot potato, catch the upward knife, you've got to be very careful. So I'll share the liquidity here.
The funny thing about this was a 90-cent coin. And you're talking about shorting at two cents.
Of course, that's just where we are in the state of the market, right? But if we look at this from a liquidity profile standpoint, right? So it's 59 shorts to 1,904 longs. Obviously, a very skewed ratio, upwards of 30 plus. And your first, thought is, how do I fade this? Where do I fade this? Well, the one thing I like to do before I actually fade this, hold on, get a little frozen screen here. Point being is we still have 59 shorts.
Let me see if
So
I can pull it up. I'm curious what the notional is.
yeah, let's see here. So many longs that Hyblock can't even run it. 2 seconds. Refresh the page.
Oh yeah, my Lena's like not
Buggy.
it's not working either.
There's so many. But I'll zoom in right being as I'm kind of getting to it. So there's still 59 shorts in the market. I remember with SXP, I faded it for like a 12% move. And I only did so after we literally ran every single short. So yes, this is such a skewed ratio still, but the fact that we still have 59 shorts tells me not everyone has been blown out yet. And I like to wait till everyone's actually blown out. So those 59 shorts, it looks like it goes up to almost 0.027. If we run all these up here, then I'd like to see maybe like 1, 2, 3, 4 shorts. That would be a fade. And then again, we'd be, like we talked about, we'd be targeting this Monday high. So let's kind of just like theory craft here, right? So like, let's say we're going to run this high. We're going to go up to like 27 something, come back down and target here. So it's tough because I'd like to know where my invalidation is. You have to be kind of selective with it. But if you're going to blindly short a level, you wait for the sweep of that high, call it 27. Maybe you're talking about those one-to-one trades. If the target down to Monday high is 20%, maybe you give yourself a 15-20% buffer, play that one-to-one trade. Again, you're trading counter trend though, so you really have to keep in mind that if you have a bone to pick with this coin, first of all, don't. It's never a healthy way to trade. A holier than thou attitude will only cost you P&L. But I'd like to actually see is, it goes up to this 27 level, comes back down below that previous high, and then depending, where that level is, that's where you set your invalidation and you get in where you get in, and then again, you're targeting this Monday high. But, I'm talking a completely counter trend trade. This could just be a much better long if you do get to Monday high, get long there or wherever the case may be. But that's Lena for you guys. I'm happy to take more requests. I don't necessarily think fading at this juncture makes sense. I'd like a push higher to fade, or the trend is your friend. It's clearly going up. Can we have another 30-40% day tomorrow? Absolutely. But that's not my cup of tea. I like to hopefully get in somewhere much lower. I don't really play once it's pumped that much, just because I don't think I have an edge. And then if I do, it's because I have tight invalidation and I don't see from a liquidity perspective just how deep Lena can go before actually, flipping some sort of previous resistance into support, because that liquidity chart is very gruesome to say the least. There's just so much liquidity. Could be, right here at like 0.02. Maybe that's a psychological level. All depends. But yeah, that's kind of my Lena approach.
Yeah, I was trying to see if there was a way to look at the funding rate, which all seem to be negative on perps for Binance and Bybit. Let me see if I can show you this. This is CoinGlass for Lena. Linear Finance, this is the one?
Yep.
Yeah, so this is OI weighted funding rate. But these are the actual funding rates. That seems very, very
I
off.
think it's the annualized or the daily funding right now.
Oh, okay. So they are negative?
Oh wow, yeah, that's super negative. That's probably what caused the pump. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that.
Right. I mean, look here. This is the example of it, right? So the one thing that I look at when if you want to try to be the hero catching the tops of these, or just the best approach, is you got to look at the funding rate. I mean, one coin that has been really accurate with that is INJ. Like the funding rate goes negative all the time. Thing pumps.
And then it squeezes every single time. Yep, like clockwork.
Yeah. So if we go here, and this is a good resource for you guys, you can just look at basically the tether paired or USD paired margin trading, like perps for funding rates. So are there any that stick out here? well, I mean,
Lena.
yeah, right. So like, it's not really an interesting thing to short, because that's telling you that there's either an insane amount of spot buying going on while everyone's trying to short, um, which you need to wait for that to cool off, right? This one's like
Yep.
always negative. uh, and yeah, so uh, coinglass.com if you guys want to ever use this. I go on this to check funding rates. Like Kava, this one was negative for a while. We saw what that did. Like anytime there is a pretty negative funding rate and the coin doesn't have liquidity that I can look at, I probably won't short it because I don't really have any sort of edge on it. But yeah, that's a side note. Also, guys, they Hyblock added some coins, so you can get Peppy now.
Oh yeah.
Um, I believe you can get Blur. I think Render is on here now, as well as INJ. Yep, INJ. Uh, Renders on here. So yeah, a lot of those coins were people that they would ask about it last stream. So now Hyblock has the liquidity profiles for those things, which is pretty nice to see.
Let's look at INJ liquidity trip. We got a request for it. And I'll take a peek at the chart.
All right, hold on. This my computer's
Yeah.
a little slow.
Lena's just messing up the chart. I really think it slowed my computer down just a second ago too. Just refresh the browser. I will.
There we go.
There you go. Yep.
27/7, 1903. Yeah, pull up a chart and I'll bring up the
Okay.
liquidity.
Perfect. All right. So this is INJ. Looking at it, just daily, obviously high, low, lower high, lower low, broke, bearish, bullish market structure from what was it, $2 or even lower, what, $1. So this is kind of just a range to me now. And when I kind of zoom in here, we have our Monday high. We did test the monthly open and rejected, although the rejection wasn't as swift, right? So we came back down, but we're still holding this low time frame uptrend. And we do have this Monday high setup here where we did sweep it, and now we're kind of back below it. Now, as long as they're above the weekly open, though, I lean bullish. Even though BTC kind of looks like it's going to chop around, INJ we just looked at had negative funding. So I do see a scenario where we consolidate here longer and then eventually maybe go higher and then lower. So I'm curious kind of what the liquidity looks like, just because from here I can see, a deviation above, sweep some of these clean highs here before we actually go down, assuming BTC is going to, break down to that 26.9 level. And then I'll, ergo the rest of the market with it.
Yeah, let's see. So it's pulling up INJ. All right, so yeah, I mean, I think I shouldn't say all of them because I mean, you look at Matic, it's trading under 90 cents now. It moved before BTC moved on Friday too. I think it went to like 96 cents right away.
Yep.
I was like, oh, I'll short it. I saw people shorting it, and I was like, but if you think BTC is going to 28.3 or even 27.3, then Matic's going to go to $1 plus. But it didn't, right? So that's kind of those instances where I was looking at some of these altcoins, how they'll move and then money will rotate elsewhere. So INJ, like it's interesting, right? Because here's a high, here's a higher low, right? So you're kind of marching up this bullish market structure, right? There are 126 million in longs. You're not like it's not like crazy offsides, but with negative funding and seemingly that people really probably want to short this thing, I can see this going into this liquidity and really like taking people out. Like, because until you make a lower low on the lower time frames, right? Then you kind of need to expect that this trend is going to continue,
Yep,
right? So if
exactly.
you take these lows out, then you've made a lower low. And so I don't know how far it comes down, but then the move back up is your lower high or however that's going to manifest. But these moves are rather swift. If BTC reverses and ETH reverses, this will just run a ton of liquidity down into like probably these this SR zone potentially.
Yep, just
I mean,
below
you can
10.
draw a diagonal here and argue that this already maybe broke. You could draw a diagonal on this top side and try to determine, like, okay, if it's a move up, then that's your resistance there. But yeah, like it can squeeze higher. So I'm not in a rush to short this. Like, and yeah, it's nice to have liquidity on this though.
It
Now we
is.
can see like
So the
now we,
fact that liquidity goes up to like almost 8.5,
yeah.
I really like that. Kind of goes in line with the thought that, these are some unswept highs, and you talked about that diagonal. I just kind of threw that on there for shits. Consolidate and then make a move higher to like
Oh
eight
yeah, there
three,
you go.
8.4. I mean, that looks like a pretty decent setup. You'd sweep these highs, you'd hit the diagonal, you'd sweep all the liquidity you just mentioned, and then maybe you wait until you actually break down to actually get into a short. But if we get below the monthly open, given new monthly is going to start tomorrow, or in 2 days, I'd probably wait for to see a valid rejection, wait for price to get below Monday monthly open, Monday high, and then maybe that's your short down to Monday low, or that SR flip that you kind of mentioned, which I think is around the Monday low. But yeah, that's kind of the INJ approach.
Yeah, I mean, you can get up here and attempt to look at low time frame and determine a high, and then if it starts breaking down, you can take a shot at trying to short it, and like you're guessing the high. But if you're pairing it with liquidity and you're looking at maybe ETH is around that level that we talked about, there's a lot of confluence around that. And if you see like the ratio is like there's like 30 shorts left, then you're getting close to an exhaustion point. Or you can take the safer route below Monday's high, but then your stop could be really high up. That's the thing, you
Yeah,
know?
and then the risk reward just reduce at that point, and there's probably better opportunities elsewhere.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Uh,
We got OP
OP.
next.
Now we'll take a look at OP. The
Let's look.
unlocks on this one are coming. That
Yeah, didn't they happen today or yesterday?
I think it was
'Cause
that and Sui, but like it was 153, and then I looked and it was like 140 because it broke down like.
this thing has just been obviously down only mode. I think this has been one of Exo's favorite also short. Let's just draw a diagonal here, or sorry, horizontal here. Can this be like a range level potentially that we're coming into now? We swept that low.
Oh wow,
It's just been
630 shorts to 66 longs.
okay. So the fact that there's still 66 longs in my mind tells me we're probably still going to go lower. And the reason being is
140 is a big
okay.
low.
Yeah. Okay. So you sweep below this level, maybe reclaim it. So for me to get into an OP long, Rodrigo says OP looks delicious for long. Doesn't look that delicious yet, to be honest with you. I want to see a reclaim of this Monday low before attempting to long it, just because you lost the Monday low, you swept this low. You didn't get any reaction when you swept this low. You just went right to it. A strong 3.5, 4% candle for on the 4 hour. So to me, this is just a straight downtrend. I'm not going to pick and choose where I think the downtrend is going to stop. I'm going to wait for prices to seemingly either go lower or consolidate for a good amount of time before considering longing.
What's like a daily chart of this thing? Yeah, like okay, so look at like let's just put everything into perspective here. It is at support. Like if you want an SR level, like it's 140 around that zone, right?
Yeah, yeah,
That's a 25x lick. That's pretty big on the downside. So like if BTC goes down and does that, you're probably going to get this zone. And this is like a key DBS zone, right? Like
yep,
that's
yep.
where
You need to hold this 140 level. Mario says OP unlocks in 2 hours. So yeah, I'd assume probably on the new daily open. What I'd like to see then, since you say it's in 2 hours, going into the new daily, this daily closes whatever, and the next daily has a long lower wick to wherever, obviously extending it there. But point being is a long lower wick and then a reclaim of the so sweep below daily opening drive down, have some sort of buyback reaction. And then if you see a buyback reaction, maybe you get long and then you take profit on the Monday low, wait for a reclaim, and then get long again. But keep in mind, Monday low is resistance now. I don't expect the first tap to just break back through, but I'd be waiting for a reaction before actually getting long. Blindly buying what's a clear daily, weekly, hourly downtrend doesn't seem like the highest probability trade in that regard.
And knowing how illiquid this thing is, watching it squeeze around up and down in the past.
Oh yeah, I
is-
remember. We've had some fun with that coin.
Yeah. But like the bottom lick is 137. Like that is your Pico bottom lick on OP. Like I don't know, the 140 area is interesting based on that chart and whatnot, but you'd be guessing the bottom because you can have a ton of longs come in on the 140 and it can keep
Yeah.
going down.
And it's just derivatives longs, right? Like that's a very important point is like you want to see spot buyers. And if we literally have spot sellers coming into the market in 2 hours, Mario says, what if it goes up so on the unlock so they can sell the tokens higher? Yeah, potentially. But, if derivatives are pushing it up while spot is selling into it, the likelihood that we're actually going to make a higher high or break in, bearish market structure is very low. So any, squeeze would be short-lived. And I think it would behoove you to kind of play with the trend rather than against it. So I'm more in the camp like if we get back to Monday low, I'd rather short it than long, just trying to call the bottom.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of reminds me of how Lido traded into like the big 150 SR.
Oh yeah,
Um,
okay.
I'll show you that because that one, like, there were some things that I had marked on the chart. Like, okay, like you're coming into high time frame, like fib SR levels. And look, like Lido, let's just make this big. Lido's been a crazy coin. Like, like this damn thing. Let's look on a daily chart of this because this was right. What do we have here? Clean this up. So this one, like when it hit, what was it, 157?
Yep.
Like similar to like a really big like retest of a SR, right? You might, and it, well, I guess kind of matches up to this. Not the same as OP, but you definitely came into like a
Key
big
level.
retest. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got an insane reaction, and then you put a double bottom in, and you literally ran every short through the quarterly open. Do I think OP is going to do something crazy like this? Probably not, but it could go to 130, mid 130s, 140, and then trade to like, if we're looking at,
to some sort of lower high.
yeah, I mean, if it really did a crazy delta reversal, let's just see here. 150 is where your resistance is. Like, if can you see this?
Yep.
So if you come down here, let's say people short this, your squeeze is going to be like to these lows, right?
Yeah, SR flip basically of those lows.
151. Lido basically did one of these and just like took everything out. Can OP do that? Maybe. It's not something
You
embedded.
need BTC to provide the right conditions, right? I think that's the other overarching factor to keep in mind. It's like we just talked about BTC probably going to go fill that gap. The likelihood, like if we fill that gap and go back up, great. But in this situation, it makes more sense for OP to go lower before higher, similarly to BTC. So you can't expect too much juice out of that first squeeze.
Yeah, and I don't disagree about the unlocks and higher price and whatnot, but there are going to be people that just who got the thing at like a ridiculously low price and
Pennies on the dollar,
it's
literally.
still $1.50, and they are going to sell their spot. That's just that's going to happen. So
Just how it goes.
yeah. So I don't know if there was any other request, but render is one that's
Uh,
been added.
yep, go for Ender. Then we got Phantom after that.
So render, nothing. You maybe pull up a chart on that. That's been an interesting one because that's one that actually underperformed while everything went up, and that was a coin that was strong. I forget. Is it AI or is it VR? Apple said something they were doing with it, maybe. But it definitely caught the tailwind of what was happening in traditional. Um, and where'd it go? $3,
Yep.
I think. Yeah. So now it's kind of just like look at it. It's not really doing a ton. This is pretty ripe liquidity right here. Just down to 250, and then you have a gap that starts 246. But you do have 95 million in shorts. I mean, there's clearly more shorts. Can it squeeze if BTC goes up? Sure, but the nearest liquidity is 266. These 100x or these 20x longs at 256 seem pretty ripe. Could take it down to 250, and then see if people aggressively short it and they come in here. But it's not that exciting to me. I haven't looked at the chart really.
Yeah, just the chart in general, it almost looks like a better short in general. Even though we discussed, I think last week, having like that near wick up. But you talked about those 100x's here, and we swept the Monday low. Like, yeah, we had a decent reaction, but we didn't even get back to weekly open. So in my mind, I'd almost look for like a break below Monday low, and then maybe bounces off Monday open, and then the retest of the Monday low is a short back down lower. And that's kind of just in line with BTC going back down to that 26.9 CME gap fill. So yeah, I think render just looks like a more stronger short than it does a long, seeing as we don't really have a bullish case. The move happened, right? The whole AI whatever move, like that was the move from 70 to $3, whatever. Makes a lot more sense that the short side looks more attractive from a risk reward perspective. But yeah, let's move on to Phantom and wrap things up here. You pull up liquidity.
You ever put on the previous weekly high and low and mid?
No, I've really just been using the Monday high, low, weekly open, and then just the opening prices. The highs and lows are extremities that I've looked at, but I found just simpler the better. So I prefer 3-4 lines on the chart.
Yeah, I do find the previous weekly high and low to be pretty good, because we took it with BTC basically.
Yep.
So that's why I was kind of talking about maybe we're in a weekly range. But yeah, let's look at, what was it? Phantom?
Yeah, so Phantom looks kind of similar to OP. It's coming into this whatever level you want to call it. 30-cent level. It's kind of been bleeding into it. But again, since April, it's kind of just been down only. And we talked about with BTC last week, where's that lower high? Look at Phantom, same thing. Are we eventually going to come back to this monthly open potentially at some point? Probably, but this just really looks like one giant descending triangle. So, whether you go like this first and then maybe like this and then eventually that. I think eventually a lot of these alts are going to draw these bearish descending patterns, and we will see lower prices eventually. To be more specific about Phantom, it's below the Monday low currently. It's below all the other levels. Is it making a higher low from this low? It just seems too close of a higher low compared to how these lows were, that until Monday low is reclaimed, I don't really like it for longs. So if we did something like this, I'd like it maybe to weekly open, even though it seems like a stretch. But given where we think BTC is, I think what actually makes more sense is you get back into this Monday low, come back down. That's maybe a short here. And then your invalidation is wherever this high is or maybe above this high. And then you're playing, for some macro level, 30-cent macro level here, whatever this support is. Yeah, so Phantom looks more positive or more attractive on the short side. What's Liquidity telling us, Trip?
So, yeah, I mean, there's how many? 52 million in shorts. I feel like I've seen this with like insane amounts of shorts relative to this. Wasn't there like 400 million in shorts?
420 million, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so can it build a lot more? Yeah. Is that a direct impact of liquidity in the market? Yes. But look, there's not much close to price here in terms of squeeze. So you're picking a direction on BTC and ETH, and then I haven't looked at this against BTC or ETH to be honest, but if you get the move down, this seems likely, where Zoran just talked about the 30 level, because it's pretty close to those lows. If you get a move up, you could literally only go to here. I mean, there's just a huge draw on liquidity above. Nothing's super clear to me with this, and it's not really a good setup. I don't necessarily know what you would be targeting up here. I guess I would probably pull a fib off of that high that you just showed down to the low. Maybe you would take this high. But
when I look at the BTC pair, it's really just trending towards all-time low almost, and there's a bunch of, this is the low is 160 or 1166 on the BTC pair, and like these macro lows here are like 163. So based on ETH BTC, Phantom BTC, sorry, this is trending lower, so it makes more sense. Again, the short side is more attractive. I don't expect this to outperform Bitcoin anytime soon. So again, the Monday low setup for the short makes more sense in my mind, given our thoughts on BTC.
What's the percentage decline down to those lows?
Like
it already like hit them.
Yeah, it missed them by 3 sats. So this is 166, and these are 163.
I mean, if you sweep those and reclaim that, then and it goes into those the area we talked about, like yeah, like look, I don't want to short anything that looks like that. Like unless I'm like planning on a huge breakdown. I typically like to short the spikes. I'm really bad at shorting support. I never freaking work.
Who would have thought? Shorting support just low EV.
Well, even the Monday low stuff, like when it loses it and retests it, I'm like, well, this is the most obvious place that people are going to short a breakdown. Like what happens with BTC. What I think is going to happen is like you're going to run the Monday low. It'll go lower. People will short the breakdown, and they're going to get their faces ripped off because everyone's going to think the same thing. I'm not good at shorting Monday low retests or anything that looks like that so far down on the chart with support. I will look to go short another asset. Render's probably like more attractive just relative to where it is on
the
the chart.
Up in the chart. Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
And there's more risk reward for the I guess the risk you're putting shorting something that's already pumped.
Right, like OP, like the short was from $2. Like so, they've just dropped a lot. And so I think that's one thing to consider. Just like pull up the high time frame chart. The SR level, like over a daily, weekly period, is you retest that for the first time, even second time, like there's buyers there.
Yeah, exactly.
So
it's like the more level gets tested, the weaker it becomes. But the second time, or potentially even the third time, usually you still get a decent enough reaction that it provides a trade setup, and that's really all we're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, look at the 26K level on BTC.
Exactly.
That was like 3 or somewhere around there, right? So that's the context of the chart on a higher time frame is also pretty important.
Awesome. Yeah,
I think that's
we
good for now.
Talked about a bunch of alts: BTC, ETH, Phantom, Render, Lena, OP, bunch of others. But yeah, guys, I think the overarching point going into the rest of the week is we talked about the Monday low, talked about the Monday high on BTC. I personally am looking for that Monday low to get swept and reclaimed before I actually look to long. The area of interest we talked about was that like 26.9 level, the CME gap that Trent mentioned. So until we see those levels happen, again, it might not happen until Friday, it might not happen until close to the end of the week, whatever the case is, being patient for those setups to kind of come to you is probably going to be the highest probability trade. And given where we are with the market conditions, liquidity, and volatility, less is more. Be patient and just kind of let these setups come to you. So with that said, guys, it's been an awesome episode, and we'll see you guys next week.
Later, guys.